Alright, we are back talking about MLP, and in this video, we'll be ranking all the other main characters of the show. Now, obviously, made a previous video talking about the main six and how I rank them, but obviously that left out some other key characters that people would consider to be part of the main cast. This video will look specifically at those characters. Now, for this video, there are 12 other main characters that I'm considering for this video. There's the six members of the Creature Six, like introduced in season 8. There's the CMC. There's Starlight Glimmer, Spike, and Discord. Those are the people that I'm considering for this list. I mean, and of course, like I said in my previous video, this is 100% my opinion. Like obviously, this is more subjective than the episode ranking, even though that is also subject to subjectivity. But bear with me, it is my opinion. So let's not waste any more time. So starting off the list at number 12, my least favorite character of this grouping has to be Discord. Now, I know that I've talked a bit about this in some of my previous videos. I know that I bashed on him a bit in some of those episodes discussions, but I think now is the time to go into a bit more detail to sort of unpack my thoughts a bit. So, yeah, I don't really like Discord that much. Now, do I understand what the writers were going for with him? Yes. Do I necessarily hate him? Not quite. But I find that in a lot of his episodes post redemption, I just don't like him that much. His main quirk, like after his redemption, is him trying to quote unquote teach other characters lessons in a convoluted, unnecessary, and at points counterproductive way. In Through the Crowd, he tries teaching Twilight to be a good friend to him by pretending to be sick and forcing her and Cadence to go to the end of Equestria for a flower. When we see the rest of the main six, minus Fluttershy, still don't trust him that much. Like that sort of raises the question, why doesn't he care as much about teaching them to be good friends for him? I mean, I know he explains at the end how Twilight's a princess now and how that could make her high and mighty, but still, it's a bit convoluted. And what about Discord? He spends the whole episode trying to make Twilight feel left out so that she can get jealous, so that he can teach her to not be jealous. Which is like, okay. And there's a matter of principles where after Twilight Starlight says she can manage the school on her own, he spends the whole episode hurting the students and proving to Starlight why he's completely unqualified to run a school, just to teach Starlight that she should listen to him. And then there's the whole season 9 thing where even after Twilight has saved Equestria multiple times and had taken on a number of princess responsibilities, Discord decides that she's still not ready. So he decided to give her one last test that involved him manufacturing a threat so that she can defeat that and be more confident. Those examples I just gave, I mean, none of that's fun to watch, especially in the later seasons. You'd think that at some point Discord will learn that he doesn't have to be so difficult to get his point across, or that some of his teachings are completely unnecessary. The whole Grogar situation is the worst case of this, especially considering this was after Twilight's Kingdom, where he worked alongside some other villains, only to get betrayed by them. Like, what did you think would happen? So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of how he's presented on the show. Again, I understand the point of his character arc is that he's supposed to be a redeemed villain and that he has a warped worldview and he has quirks and stuff. I get that. But when these types of episodes keep happening and seem to get worse in the later seasons, I'm left more frustrated than anything. Now, with that said, there are two main redeeming factors for him. One is that some of his earlier post redemption episodes aren't that bad, where the show makes it more of a point to call out Discord for his questionable decisions. I talked about Three's a Crowd earlier, as well as What About Discord. And both of those episodes do end up with Discord having to learn a lesson as well, where Three's a Crowd has Discord actually getting sick and him learning that this is all a stupid plan. And then What About Discord involves Discord learning that he shouldn't try to just have fun with his friends just to make someone else jealous, that those fun memories should just be fun memories. I kind of like that where, yeah, he's quote unquote teaching a lesson, but he's learning a lesson too, so I can at least appreciate that. And that even extends to some other episodes like Make New Friends But Keep Discord, and especially in Twilight's Kingdom. In fact, Twilight's Kingdom is the perfect redemption episode for him, where he's trusted enough to follow Tyrek around, only to be manipulated into working with him, and by the end, he's betrayed by Tyrek, causing him to finally realize that evil just isn't worth it. That's great. And the other redeeming factor is his relationship with Fluttershy. I mean, Fluttershy is the character that brings out the best in him, And it's very nice seeing him trying to do the right thing in order to protect her or to make her proud. I mean, we have Discord and our Harmony where he tries so hard to put together a tea party that Fluttershy will like and try so hard to be normal. And by the end, like Fluttershy is the one that has to ease him back into being himself. And obviously that's very nice to see. I mean, I think there are great things about Discord that do redeem his character to a degree, but it's those downsides that really drag him down for me, and that's why I have him here as my least favorite of these main characters. Now we're moving on to number 11, and I feel like we're moving on to a tier of characters who I like and don't really have that much issue with, but they're just not super compelling, or at least not as compelling as the characters we'll be talking about later on this list. So at number 11, we have probably the least compelling of this group. We have Sambar. Now, some of you probably saw that coming, but I'm not a big Sambar fan. Not that I don't like him or find him annoying, but he's easily the least interesting of the Creature Six. Now, I'll admit some of that's probably by design. I mean, he is the pony in this group of characters that are supposed to represent different cultures, different creatures, and with that comes more intrigue. But at the end of the day, I mean, he is the normal character. He is representing the normal culture we've been accustomed to. I mean, and I can recognize the role that he plays in that regard, but at the end of the day, I mean, he's still the most boring one. That isn't to say he's without his fun moments. I mean, he has his own side plot in What Lies Beneath, where we learn that he's afraid of disappointing the main six, specifically Rarity and Rainbow Dash. There's also his heartwarming story in Heartwarming Club, where the joke is that his life is so boring that the most exciting thing that happened was when his doll could have fallen into the fire. And there's also She's All Yak, where he plays a somewhat big role in that. I mean, Yonah likes him and she wants to impress him, causing her to assimilate into pony culture. Like, and all that's pretty cool. I mean, like seeing his reaction to her efforts and at the end him helping her feel better. I mean, all that's nice. Like there are nice moments with him, but I feel like compared to the other members of the Creature Six, I just feel like there just isn't as much going for him. And I guess that's the main reason I have him here at number 11. Now we're moving on to number 10, and this was tough. I mean, I really like this character a lot. I mean, obviously, this is a pretty integral character to the show, like, so it's tough to put them as low as they are, but I feel like when looking at the rest of the field, I mean, I kind of have to put them as low as they are. But at number 10, we have the first CMC character on this list. We have Apple Bloom. Now, like I said, this was tough, as I do enjoy the CMC quite a bit. And considering I put Applejack at the bottom of my main six ranking, it would feel kind of cheap to also put Apple Bloom low on this list. But again, just looking at the rest of the field, I just enjoy all the other characters more. Now, with that said, I mean, Apple Bloom has plenty of great moments on the show. I mean, for one, she's the first CMC to really get any focus on the show. I mean, obviously, she has a bit of a focus in Rattle Gossip. I mean, in Call of the Cutie, the episode that forms the CMC, she's the main focus of that episode. Really, the first CMC character to get a focus episode, and I do like Call of the Cutie quite a bit. She also gets plenty of good episodes along the way. I mean, there's Some Pony to Watch Over Me, which isn't the best episode, but I can at least relate to her due to her being the youngest in the family. There's Bloom and Gloom, which obviously her Luna episode, which is also pretty good, and I just like her quite a bit. But again, when just comparing her to the rest of the field, I mean, and comparing her to the rest of the CMC, I just feel like she has the least going on with her, and I feel like that's the main reason I have her here at number 10. Now we're moving on to number 9, and I actually consider putting this character a little higher. I mean, not super high, but definitely a little higher. But again, just looking at the characters, I just felt like this character didn't quite add up. So at number 9, we have Ocelot. Now, like I said, I like Ocelot a lot. I mean, and it definitely helps that she's voiced by Shannon Sean Kent, who, if you don't know, is Pinky's singing voice. So I get some amusement just listening to her voice in that regard. But in a lot of ways, she's also a good character. I mean, she reminds me a lot of Moondancer, in that she's both a bookworm and but also very introverted and shy. I mean, obviously she doesn't have the bitterness that Moondancer had, but yeah, I still get that parallel quite a bit. Obviously, she's a very charming character, like definitely a more calm presence on the show. I mean, she gets a very cool segment in What Lies Beneath, where she turns into Chrysalis, kind of feeding into her fears of being stereotyped as being evil. I felt that was pretty cool. And there were other nice moments too, like in 246 Great, where she wanted to be on the cheer squad as the person that was calling all the commands. I thought that was pretty nice for her in this episode. But with that said, I just don't find her as interesting or as compelling as the other characters in the Creature 6. I mean, her soft-spoken nature can make her come off as similar to Thorax, kind of falling in line with the reformed changelings being more milquetoast. I mean, and to be fair, I do like the reformed changelings. I think there's a bit of charm to them, but again, the comparison, I feel like that comparison at least doesn't make her quite as compelling in my eyes. And I just feel like other characters just do more for me. So I have Ocelot here at number 9. Now we're moving on to number 8, and I feel like we're moving on to characters that I really like, and I feel like they have episodes that provide some additional intrigue into who they are, but obviously not to the extent of the top tier. So starting at number 8, we have Gallus. Now, I actually really like Gallus. I mean, just watching him on the screen, I mean, he's very funny and very snarky, and I actually considered putting him a bit higher on the list, but obviously he's here at number 8. Like I said, I mean, he has a very dry and snarky attitude. It gets to me at times. Like he has a lot of really funny and cool moments on the show. I mean, I would consider him one of the funnier members of the Creature Six, and I enjoy him whenever he's on screen. He's always someone I latch onto whenever he's there. And of course, he has some stuff going for his character. I mean, obviously in season 8 at the premiere, like there's his whole relationship with Grandpa Gruff. We see him struggle, really beg him to stay at the school when it seems like at first Grandpa Gruff doesn't want him to stay at Pony School. Well, I thought that was a bit interesting. And of course, that leads up a bit to the reveal in Hearthstone Club of him not really having a family, where Grandpa Gruff is just kind of his unofficial guardian. And through that, I mean, he has some serious abandonment issues. And I thought that was a very cool thing to add to his character. And considering like his actions towards Grandpa Gruff in the premiere, I felt like that added a bit of depth to his character. So I feel like that is something at least that adds a bit to his character. But even so, the reason I don't put him higher on the list is because I feel like outside of that one episode, there just isn't as much there. I mean, his whole storyline in What Lies Beneath, where he's claustrophobic, just didn't it was fine, but it just didn't add up to the same extent as some other characters we'll be talking about. But for what it is, I thought more and more like, again, I really like Gallus. I mean, I know there are things about him that I really enjoy, but I just feel like compared to other characters, there's just even more going for them. So I have Gallus here, number 8. Now we're moving on to number 7, and I'll admit that this character probably isn't as funny as Gallus, but they definitely have more going on for them as a character, and I definitely find them a bit more relatable. But we have the second CMC member on this list. We have Sweetie Belle. Now, I'll admit, Sweetie Belle is an interesting character to talk about. I'll admit that on the surface, she isn't the quirkiest character in the world, although she has a number of things going for her. In earlier seasons, at least, there's her fascination with music and singing. There's also her interest in magic, which is explored in certain episodes. But really, I'd say the main thing I find interesting with Sweetie Belle is her relationship with Rarity. Now, obviously, each of the CMC have an older counterpart in the main six, acting as their guardian, but I really enjoy seeing Sweetie Belle and Rarity interact. I find the older sister younger sister dynamic very relatable, and we get several focus episodes exploring that. There's Sister Who's Social, where Rarity learns to be a better older sister for Sweetie Belle. I found that to be pretty interesting. There's For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, where Sweetie Belle feels like she's in Rarity's shadow and grows pretty jealous. And then there's Forever Philly, where Sweetie Belle has to deal with Rarity and vandalizing her. All this stuff is stuff I can relate to. I mean, I was the youngest sibling in my family growing up, and I can see a lot of where Sweetie Belle is coming from in these episodes. I mean, obviously in Sister Who's Social, she's young, she very much looks up to her sister, older sister, and tries her best to win her approval. Like later on, like she grows up a bit, kind of gets that approval a bit, like leading up to her starting to feel a bit inadequate and a bit jealous, because she's not as far along in her life and in terms of her accomplishments, leading her to get jealous. Like she kind of just wants to grow up a bit. And then there's Forever Philly, where she has grown up a bit, but the older sister just hasn't caught up to it. And again, all this stuff is stuff I can relate to as, growing up as being the baby of my family. And I find that stuff pretty interesting for her character. And in turn, like I've had people in my life that are younger than me that where I have taken on the older person in that responsibility. So again, I can see a bit from Rarity's perspective as well. So I feel like she has a very strong set of focus episodes, specifically concerning her relationship with Rarity. Now, I'll admit, like outside of that, like she isn't the most interesting character in the world. I mean, there's definitely characters there that feel like I can talk more about. But I feel like the fact that I can relate to Sweetie Belle so much, and the fact that that relationship with Rarity is explored in those strong focus episodes, makes it good enough for me to have her here at number 7. Now we're moving on to number 6, and I'll admit that at one point this was my favorite character in the Creature 6. I had this person number 1 in my Creature 6 ranking. But then I just thought about it more and more, and then on my rewatch, I definitely grew a deeper appreciation for other characters, which caused this character to slip down to number 3. But I still really like this character. So at number 6, we have Yonah. Now, yes, I like Yonah a lot. She's very forthright and proud of her culture, which makes her funny, unique, charming. And I always like the way that she talks about the lessons that she's learned about friendship. I mean, there's obviously an Uprooted where she's the only one in the Creature Six to realize they need to work together. There's the ending of the end where she makes her big speech to the Yaks, encouraging them to work together. I find that to be pretty interesting. She has a fantastic focus episode in She's All Yak, where despite being one of the more prouder members of her respective culture, she decides to assimilate into pony culture as a way of impressing Sambar for the Amity Ball. And it's very interesting to see her do that. To obviously, there's a song. There's also the whole montage of her, getting used to dancing and speaking with Brussels sprouts in her mouth. I mean, I found that to be pretty interesting. There's her breakdown at the end and her realizing that it's okay to buy into yak culture and people will like her for who she is. I mean, I found that to be pretty interesting. In a lot of ways, she reminds me of why I like Fluttershy and Pinky in that she's very authentic and definitely someone that's proud of who she is. I mean, and obviously there's a lot of charm that comes from that. But again, I just thought about it more and more. Like, and for all that I like Yona, I just feel like other characters on the list just do more for me. I feel like there are just more high moments for them, which causes me to put her here at number 6 on this list. Now we're moving on to number 5, and I did consider putting this character a bit lower on the list, but then I just thought about it and I decided, you know what? I like her a lot. Let's put her here. At number 5, we have Silverstream. Now, obviously, there are multiple parallels to Pinky here, who I've gone on record as saying is my favorite character of the show. And she definitely captures a lot of that energy with her always being excited and her being so clueless and awestruck by the ground. I mean, she's even insensitive at points. I mean, the first thing that came to mind for me is in She's All Yak, where when Yona arrives at the ball, like dressed like a pony, the first thing she says is she looks weird. I mean, that's definitely something. Like Ocelot, she has a fantastic scene in What Lies Beneath, where her greatest fear is being conquered by the Storm King, and obviously through that, like we see a lot of trauma build up with her over that period of her life where the Storm King took over her home and sort of ruled it, and obviously that leads to a great speech of her where she finally stands up to the Storm King. Like, obviously that's a lot of depth right there. And, definitely recontextualizes how you see some of her more excited fish out of water moments. Like, she was traumatized by the Storm King and sort of represents her people in that sense, where they were sort of trapped and forced underwater for a long time, only to finally come out and see the world and be amazed by the world around them. I thought that was very moving as a way of moving on from her and her people's past. So I definitely found that element of her interesting. And there's also, of course, the parallels to Pinky. Like, she's definitely more of the Pinky figure in the Creature Six. But she also has some other interesting moments, like in Student Council, when she disappears for most of the episode, only to find out that she's been researching cockatrices. I thought that was a little interesting, a bit tacked on, but still pretty interesting. But again, I just like Silverstream a lot. Like, she definitely reminds me a lot of Pinky. That's definitely something that's helping her to a certain extent. Even though I'll admit that she's a bit of a lesser version of Pinky, but still good enough to be number 5 on this list. Now we're moving on to number 4, and we're actually moving on to my favorite of the Creature 6 characters, and I'll admit I wasn't expecting this character to be my favorite. I mean, I remember at the time that the season 8 and season 9 were coming out, this wasn't my favorite character, but I feel like as time has gone on, like, and I've rewatched certain episodes, I've really grown a deep appreciation for Smolder. Now, I look at Smolder very similarly to Gallus, as they're both prone to snarkiness, like, and they definitely have their funny moments. I would say Gallus is probably funnier than Smolder, but the reason I have Smolder above Gallus is I think she has more going on for her aside from that. I'm really compelled by her relationship with Spike. We see in episodes like Moltdown and Father Knows Beast where she's kind of a mentor figure for Spike, helping him understand dragon culture and really being a positive example of representation. I think all that's great. I mean, in Moltdown, obviously, she explains to him what like the Molts is and sort of helps him through that process. And Father Knows Beast, so obviously she helps him realize that Sludge has been taking advantage of him, like and helping to sort of out him as not really being Spike's father. You know, and even smaller moments like in Rock Coop and A Hard Place, where it's revealed that they like to have fire breathing contests for some reason. But still, all that's great. You know, like at the same time, like I find, like she has a girly side that is a bit amusing. Obviously, her test in What Lies Beneath involves her wearing a dress, which she's embarrassed by at first, but then later on the episode, she seems a bit more open to it, even if she tries to admit like that she tries to keep it a secret, like, but she still kind of likes it deep down. And then there's 246 Great, where despite that being a terrible episode, like she joins the Tear Squad thinking it'd be fun. And obviously there's a scene where she calls out Rainbow for not caring about what other people like and how she was excited about Rainbow coaching them because of how passionate she is. Like that was a very nice scene as well. But so really like I feel like on the rewatch and as time has gone on, like my appreciation for Smolder has really gone up. Like I really grew to like her as a character. A lot of that coming from her relationship to Spike, her being a mentor figure there, but also having her moments like in 246 Great, which I just mentioned. So yeah, I think at this point, Smolder has become my favorite of the Creature Six, but obviously there are three characters left to talk about, so she's here at number four. Now we're moving on to number three, and the top three are all characters I really, really like. It's just a matter of determining the order, and of course, they're all pretty major characters on the show. But at number three, I decided to have Spike. Now, Spike is a weird character to talk about. I mean, because on one hand, I think his focus episodes are a very mixed bag. I mean, All's Well That Ends Well, Dragon Quest, Spike at Your Service, Princess Spike, Father Knows Beast are all terrible episodes, in my opinion. I could spend 5 hours explaining why, but I think you get the point. And considering how much I talked about focus episodes when explaining my thoughts on other characters, you'd think Spike would be lower here, as he has had bad focus episodes. The thing, though, is that Spike isn't the biggest problem with any of them. All's Well That Ends Well is bad because Twilight is too obtuse to realize how her actions are driving Spike crazy. Dragon Quest is bad because it's racist, but tries to wrap that under a toxic masculinity context. Plus, it's not funny. Spike at Your Service, well, okay, Spike maybe is partially to blame due to being annoying, but still, it's sad to see him feel honor bound by a dragon code that we never hear from again. You know, and then Princess Spike tries to put Spike in the wrong, but is too contrived and broken to be believable. So Spike isn't exactly the problem with these focus episodes, but as for the character himself, I find him very endearing and likable. Now I'll admit some of that stems from me feeling bad for him as people about him treat him like a monkey, but we also get plenty of episodes, particularly in later seasons, of him having his own hobbies and friends, like his stuff with Big Mac, you know, like in Discord, I guess. He has a multitude of relationships he shares throughout the series. There's his relationship with Twilight, which can be a bit ambiguous for my liking. I don't particularly like the boss servant dynamic they have in earlier seasons, but in later seasons, they zero in more on the familiar relationship, with some episodes having it be a mother son thing, and other episodes being more of a big sister little brother dynamic. There's his crush on Rarity, which, okay, I'm not a huge fan of, but he does have some good episodes attached to that. But then there's relationship with Starlight. In season 6, I really like how she turns to him a lot for her advice, like finding the confidence to face Sunburst. There's his relationship with Ember, which feels pretty special in the episodes that feature it. And there's his relationship with Smolder, which I discussed earlier. So really, I mean, there's a lot going on with Spike, and I admit that to liking him a lot, despite his focus episodes just not cutting it for me. But obviously, there are two other characters that just do more for me on the whole. so I decided to leave him here at number 3. Now we're moving on to number 2, and I know this is going to be controversial as I know people don't like this character a lot, but I personally enjoy them a lot, and we have Starlight Glimmer. Now, again, I really like Starlight Glimmer, but okay, let's get out of the way. Yes, her choice to accept friendship at the end of Cutie Remark was bad. it- Everything about it was rushed from her backstory to the clues that she would be open to friendship to the actual decision itself. I fully admit that, and I understand why people were upset with her inclusion into the show, but that doesn't invalidate what comes afterwards. Yes, I will admit that from season 6 onward, she feels like a radically different personality from season 5, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. There's her redemption arc throughout season 6, where we see how uncomfortable she is with moving on from her past. She's terrified about facing Sunburst again, to possibly face disappointment from him over what she became. There's no second Francis where she befriends Trixie, only for Twilight to continually not trust her. While that is a fault I attribute to Twilight within that episode, it's still cool to see. There's everything little thing she does where she resorts to using mind control on her friends when she gets so caught up in doing the actual activities correctly that she overlooks the bonding those activities are intended to mold. And there's To Where and Back Again, where all this stuff comes full circle. So while her decision to accept friendship was rushed, the actual redemption arc, which I consider all of season 6, is quite good. But beyond that, she's someone I enjoy watching on screen, even if I understand why people see her as bland. Even in season 5, where she's an antagonist, there's quite a bit going on with her as well. There's her whole ideology of viewing cutie marks as a source of inequality and division, which is somewhat compelling. And while I don't like that they pull the hypocrisy card as a way of invalidating that concept, I think her later appearances shed some new light on all this. Deep down, Starlight is someone that wants to be in control and is quick to succumb to anxiety should she be placed in situations where people aren't doing what she wants. So while her cutie mark ideology is born of real trauma for her, the whole cult thing stemmed from power. So at least there's that. But yeah, on the whole, like I do like Starlight a lot as a character. I mean, she definitely has plenty of depths going for her. I enjoy watching her every time she's on screen. Like she definitely develops her own relationships and arcs throughout the series, such as her friendship with Trixie, her relationship with Sunburst, and then later on when she becomes the guidance counselor of the school. So I think all of that is a big reasons that I have her as high as she is on the list, but she isn't number 1. There's one character that I do enjoy more than her, so I have to leave her here at number 2. All right, number 1, my favorite of these non-main 6 main characters is Scootaloo. Now, yes, Scootaloo is my favorite of the CMC, as I feel like she's the most complex and tragic of the 3, making her very compelling to watch. Obviously, the main defining feature is her disability, or inability to fly, which gets focused on in several episodes. There's Flight to the Finish, where Diamond Tiara makes her self conscious of this to the point where she changes the routine and goes on a downward spiral. There's also the washouts, where she views the washouts as an outlet of attaining her dream of being a daredevil, as opposed to the Wonderbolts. And while we see her come to accept this part of herself for the most part, there are occasional hints that deep down she wishes she could fly. I mean, we have Bloom and Gloom and Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep. Like, both have moments where, upon learning she's in a dream, the first thing she does is start flying. In the washout, she literally says she can't fly, with the subtext of her feeling like Rainbow Dash is disappointed about that fact. And there's Surf and or Turf, where the main reason she prefers Equestria over Mount Eris is because it makes her feel like she's flying. All this is great, and her giddiness in this moment takes on a very sad undertone. There's the other element of her parents never being around, and her being the only CMC member whose main 6 counterpart, Rainbow Dash, isn't actually related to her. Before season 9, this only gets highlighted in Parental Guidance, where she talks about never getting the support from her parents that Rainbow Dash did, setting up an interesting contrast there. Obviously, there's the scene where after Rainbow Dash lashes out at her parents, Scootaloo gets very disappointed in her. And then in season 9, we finally meet her parents in The Last Crusade, where we see them try to get her to move away from Ponyville, bringing along plenty of sadness with that. So I guess the best way to sum up Scootaloo is that she's a very tragic character who manages to remain giddy and upbeat through all this adversity. And while a lot of those giddy moments are cute, they can also come off as pretty sad as we know the adversity she's facing.
I think that's very interesting to see. I mean, and it makes it interesting to see how she's able to react to it. Like, because for the most part, she's able to remain happy about it. But there are other times where these cracks kind of come out. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Surf and Her Turf is a good example of this, where she's excited about swimming around because she feels like she's flying, and she's very giddy in that scene. But at the same time, like there's a sadness to it because that's motivated by her desire to fly, which she can't achieve. So and obviously aside from that, like I just enjoy watching her on screen. I mean, she's one of these characters who anytime I see her on screen, it's just very interesting and draws my attention to that. So I think combining that with all the stuff going on with a character, from her adversity to how she manages that adversity, is a big reason she's my favorite of these characters. She's my favorite of the CMC, and she's my favorite non-main six main character. All right, and that will do it for this video. Obviously, I have more MLP videos down the line. I also have more total drama videos, and I have more survivor videos, and really just whatever I feel like doing. Obviously, if you enjoy this content, be sure to like and subscribe. I really enjoy making this content. But for now, that is the video. See ya.